Welcome back, everyone. I will start with a quick review of what we did last week, and I'll move on to Chapter 2, which is the lesson for this week. So last week we learned about HTML, that it's a language for programming websites, stands for Hypertext Markup Language. We started learning about how it's a markup language because we're taking HTML tags and we're using them to mark up our text content. So we're actually using normal text that's written in English, and then we're adding tags to this text to mark it up. And these tags are telling the web browser what kind of content we're trying to create, whether it's a heading, a paragraph, and so on. And we created that definition of a web page. It's nothing more than a file on your computer that's written according to the conventions of HTML, and it's saved with the .html file extension. So when you open this HTML file, the computer knows to open a web browser to display it. And that web browser, as we learned, is just specialized software that is able to understand HTML, to interpret these HTML tags that you put into your file, and then display the content that you use these tags to mark up in a nice visual way. So we are using Google Chrome for this class, and that's the web browser that we are going to stick to. We created our first web page for assignment 1. Hopefully you got that done with no major issues. And it will look something similar to this, because here we have an example of the basic HTML structure with a couple of tags inserted into the body. So I talked quickly about the structure of the HTML page, and we'll go over it again this week to learn it in a bit more detail. So don't forget about this super important syntax. This is going to apply from now until the end of the course. Once you learn this syntax, it's going to start becoming second nature. When you want to create a tag, we know to create this open bracket. This angled bracket is the less than symbol. And then inside brackets, we have things like code assist, which are going to help us out. So once you start typing this angled bracket, the list of tags should pop up. You're going to choose the tag that you want to insert, and then you will close it with the closing angled brackets. So that's the opening tag. That's going to start describing the content that comes just after it. And then once you're done marking up that content, you're going to have to finish with the end tag. So we have a start tag and an end tag that surround the content you're trying to mark up. And the only difference between the start tag and the end tag is this slash. The slash helps the web browser to understand which one is the start tag and which one is the end tag. If you think about it logically, if you didn't have this slash, it makes it a lot more difficult for the web browser to understand where your content begins and where your content ends. So this slash helps the browser differentiate between the start and the end tag. It is quite important to put that. Okay, so that's the syntax that we're going to follow. Most tags have a start and an end tag, but we will see this week some tags that do not. Okay, but those are just a small number of special tags that don't have a start and end tag, and you'll see later. But for the most part, keep in mind that almost all tags should have a start tag and end tag to surround your content. So white space, we started talking about white space. We'll continue that um, in the sense that you'll understand now how white space gets ignored. All the extra white space that you put into your code will collapse into a single space. So you're going to see how that works, and it's really helpful for us to organize our code. So you can organize your code however you want, but we'll talk a lot more details about that next class. Okay, so don't worry too much about that this week. Next week, we're going to start looking at how to organize our code to make it nice and pretty to look at and easy to understand. Okay, so for this week, we're going to go a bit further with our HTML. So there might be a bit more info this week. So get ready to code, okay? So we're going to look at this HTML structure a little bit more closely now. Give you a quick review. last week that we have the HTML content, which I'm highlighting here, surrounded by the HTML tags. So this is very important to have this HTML sandwich that I like to call it, with the bun on top, the opening HTML tag, and the bottom bun of the sandwich over here is the closing HTML tag. And this doc type tag here is the first thing in the page. So this is important. Um, you just need to put it so the web browser understands which version of HTML we are using. And we have this beautiful new version called HTML. It's actually really describing HTML5, which is the most modern version of HTML, and it's the best one. It's probably the last one for now. We've had many, many versions in the past over the course of the internet's history, but HTML5 is the most user-friendly and is just really, really good. And it's very simple to state. You just put this doc type tag with HTML. In the past, this tag used to be very, very complicated, but it's been extremely simple since the invention of HTML5. So anyways, that's just a little bit more details so you understand where this came from. It's just telling the web browser which version of HTML we are using, and we are using HTML5. That's the version I'm teaching you, and it's the best one. Start the HTML sandwich. That's going to surround all the content in your page. And then we're going to look at the difference between the head and the body. So the head section, remember, use the analogy. You have one head and you have one body, and the head sits on top of your body. So that's what it looks like here in our structure. We have the head tag, which I'm highlighting over here, and it's sitting on top of the body tag. We're not going to do much inside the head for the HTML part of this course. We are going to put just the title tag with the title of our HTML page. So I have this stuff described here in the textbook. First, we have that meta tag. You don't need to know too much about it except put it. If you don't have it, then any special characters like French accents, for example, or maybe the @ symbol, like in an email address, like that sign, that will not display properly. So this tag is just telling the web browser which character set to use, and we're using UTF-8, and that contains all those special symbols that you might use in your website. So you don't need to understand this too much, and you don't need to memorize it. Why? Because we have that template that I created for you in Google Brackets that you just click a button and it will put all this HTML template stuff for you. But it's important for you just to, recognize what these tags are so it doesn't look like some foreign language. The meta tag is needed so that all the characters you display that you use in your code get displayed properly. Next thing in the head is the title tag. So this title tag is what gets displayed in the web browser's toolbar. It also gets displayed in a few other places. So I told you last week about the browser's toolbar. So the text that you put in between the start title tag and the end title tag will get displayed in the web browser's toolbar. But there are other places this title will be appearing as well. When you add something to your favorites or your bookmarks, so if I go into my bookmarks and I'm just going to pull up any of them over here, so I'm looking at some bookmarks over here, and these titles here are the titles of the web pages that we put in the title tag in the head of the page. So when you bookmark a page, this title tag is being used. Another place is in search engines. So if you go to Google, I don't know, let's go to Google and we start searching for something. Let's search for candy. So when we see our results down here, this text over here is actually the title of the page that Google is finding for you. So search engines, that's another place where the content inside your title tag will appear. So there are 3 places. Last week we only learned about the browser's toolbar, but there are 2 other places where this title appears, and that's in the bookmarks and in search engine results. So that's pretty much all we're going to be doing in the head of the page for the first half of the course. And in the second half of the course, we're going to add our CSS here. So when we start learning about CSS and changing the appearance of our web pages, we're going to put the CSS in the head. So this head section is really for descriptive information. We're not going to put any content in there. It's only stuff that helps to describe the page, and for our purposes in this course, it's the title, it's the character set, and in the second half of the course, it's going to be CSS. But for anything that has to do with content, that's where the body section comes in. So the body section contains any content that's going to be shown in the page. So any content of your web page, that's where you're going to put it. That's where you put the headings, the paragraphs, images, links, and all that other fun stuff that goes inside web pages. So that's where the page content goes. So that kind of simplifies things for coding our websites. Once you put in the HTML template, you simply need to know, okay, I'm going to update the title in the head, but after that, move to the body. You go into the body, and that's where you start putting your code. In code, we're going to go into a bit more detail about the tags that we've learned so far, and we'll also look at a few new ones. So of course, the HTML syntax, which I reviewed already, so I won't go over it again right now. Just remember that these tags that we're about to look at, they all share this same syntax with the angle brackets, the open tag, the end tag, and distinguishing the open tag and the end tag with the slash. Note I've been calling them different things, but they're pretty much the same thing. Don't get confused. You could call it the start tag, the opening tag, and so on. You could call it the end tag or the closing tag. Pretty much mean the same thing. I'm just trying to indicate that we're using something to surround the content, and we need to tell the web browser where it starts and where it ends. So let's review the paragraph tag. We looked at it last week. It creates paragraphs in your website. Don't be fooled if you only have a few words or maybe a single sentence, we're still going to use the paragraph tag. So the paragraph tag is what we use to surround a block of text that is defined to be its own thing, a paragraph or even a short sentence. So these tags, tell the web browser what the content is supposed to be. So we're telling it that it's supposed to be a paragraph when we use the paragraph tag, and then the web browser gets to decide how it wants to display it. So all web browsers have default styling for each one of the HTML tags. So in the case of the paragraph tag, the web browser will add a line break before and after the p tag. That's one thing, a line break. A line break just means a new line, and that's really the definition of a paragraph. It's a block of text that will sit on its own line. So paragraph tags have a line break before and after, and it also puts some space. It puts a little bit of margin above and below. So that will help to space out the content and create a paragraph. So let's just take any example from Wikipedia. Lots of text here. So we can see paragraphs. Let's try to find a paragraph by choosing any article. Gold coin. There we go. And we could see over here, 1, 2, 3 paragraphs. So I'm going to highlight it. So you can see this is one paragraph inside of a p tag. And you can see it sits on its own line because there's a line break before it and a line break after it. And it also adds a bit of space. So there's a bit of margin before and after this block of text. Same thing over here. So basically all p tags get styled in the same way with line breaks and some space before and after. Next tag we looked at was the heading tag, more specifically the h1 tag. But here's where things get a little bit more interesting. There are actually 6 heading tags, and they're all numbered from 1 to 6. So H1 is the biggest heading. That's the one you used in your assignments last week. So H1 creates the biggest heading, and then you could use other heading tags if you want to create smaller headings. So here's the H1 tag, H2 tag, H3 tag, and so on all the way until H6. They are used to tell the web browser the structure of the document. Let's look at an example. So I've set up this document here for an example. You can see I've inserted the HTML template. Just going to add my title over here. And you can see that title that I put is now in the toolbar over here. Now inside the body of the page, I've set up some text over here. Just some text to indicate that I'm about to mark up these 6 lines with the different headings. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You can see with no tags right now, there's no HTML tags marking up this content. You can see that all the text is just smushed together. This is because white space is ignored, right? All this extra white space over here, the line break, is being truncated or collapsed into a single space. That's the deal with white space. Any extra spaces is collapsed into a single space. So that's what you're seeing. Let's start marking this up with heading tags. So I'm going to create the opening angle bracket. I'm going to type H for heading, and you'll see all the tags with H have been filtered and shown in this code assist window. So I'm going to click on H1, and then I will close the tag. So we just saw Code Assist help me out by also putting the end tag right here. So I didn't type this, but Google Brackets did. So this is a feature of most HTML text editors. They put the end tag for you automatically. So this could be useful if you're typing your content from scratch, but as I'm trying to add these tags now, it's a little bit annoying. But we can just cut it and paste it over here. So now I surrounded this text with the open H1 tag and the closing H1 tag. So what I mean by cut, this is a useful technique which I'll go over in the labs, where you just highlight some text, and in the edit menu, you have options to cut, copy, or paste. You're probably familiar with copy and paste, where it copies the highlighted text into its memory, and then when you move the insertion caret and click paste, it's going to paste it in from memory back into the text editor. Cut is the exact same thing, except that it removes the highlighted text, puts it in the memory, and then when you move the caret, the insertion caret, it's going to paste that text that you cut before. If anyone is if anyone is interested, I'll be able to show you how to change brackets so that it does not put those end tags automatically. Anyways, getting back to the original point, I now created an H1 tag. And you can see that the web browser understood that we are trying to create a heading. The text in between the heading tag, this is heading 1, has been styled as if it's a heading. It's bigger and it's bolder and it has a nice amount of margin before and after. So it is now an H1 tag. Let's do the same for the H2 tag. Going to insert the H2 tag, and then at the end of the line, going to paste in the end tag, and you can see this is being styled as an H2 tag. So let me quickly add all the remaining H tags. And there we go. So you can now see I've used all the H tags that are available to us, and you can see how the web browser decides to style them. H1 is the biggest heading, and H2 gets smaller, and all the others get a little bit smaller and smaller. Just a note, even though this is how the web browser decides to style the text, you don't want to use heading tags only to style your text. The reason we have these different numbers of heading tags is to create the structure of our document. Let me show you what I mean by that. I've opened up for you an example table of contents, and this is a perfect way to show you what I mean by structure of the document. You can see the structure of this document, this table of contents, by looking at the different sections. We have first here the biggest title, which is called contents. So this would be an example of an H1 tag. It is the biggest title in this document. Inside the contents, we have different chapters. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. These are 9 chapters that I would call the H2 tags. They are all at the same level. Some of these chapters, however, have an extra level. You can see that chapter 4 has another level, 4.1, 4.2, 4.3, and so on. So we have the title, contents, we have the chapters, and then we have the sections inside some of the chapters. So these sections, 4.1, 4.2, and so on, would be the H3 tag. H1 is the title, H2 are the chapters, and H3 are the sections inside the chapters. So that's what I mean by structuring your document. So in this case, there are only 3 levels of headings, H1, H2, and H3s. And all the content at the same level gets styled the same way. These are all H1 tags over here, the title is the H1 tag. All the chapters are the H2 tags, and all the subsections are the H3 tags. And that's all the heading tags we will use in this document. So even though we have all these 6 H tags, it doesn't mean we're going to use them all. And just a quick note, avoid thinking that this is the order of your HTML tags. So the wrong way to use these tags would be H1, H2, H3, H4, H5, H6, and all the way until H200,000. That just doesn't work. We're not using it to determine the order of the headings. We're using it to determine the structure of the document. So that's pretty much it for the heading tags. They're quite important when you're making websites for real because of search engines. When your page is structured properly using H tags, search engines have a better time reading through your website and understanding what the content is and how to retrieve it as results for the people searching for the content that might be inside your site. So let's just look at a more realistic scenario of what this might look like. So generally we don't get too far past H3s, but for this demo I'm just going to use 2 levels of headings, and I'm going to create a big title over here, and then I'm going to call this chapter 1. So I have a big title. Oh, lost my live preview. Let's try to get this going again. There we go. So it's been updated. So I have my H1, which is the big title, the H2, which is chapter 1. And now I'm going to paste in a paragraph that I prepared. Looks like my live preview isn't really working out today. And there you go. So using the tags that we've seen up till now, we have the H1 tag, the H2 tag, and then the paragraph tag. And just so you get a better sense of what this might look like with more content, I'm going to copy and paste this chunk with the H2 tag a few times. And I'll just update it to say chapter 2 and chapter 3. And remember, white space is ignored, right? So I'm using white space over here just to make things a little bit easier to see in my code. And they all don't really get affected in the output. And you'll notice even though I have chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3, they are all using H2 tags, right? The chapters are all at the same level in the structure of the document. They are all chapters, and that's why they're all getting the H2 tag. And you see the result of this in the output over here, where you have the H1 tag, which is the big title, and then chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3 are being shown in H2 tags, and then you have some paragraphs for each of the chapters. All right, so let's look at the next tag. It's called the block quote tag. It's used for longer quotations of text. So if you're ever reading an article online or in a magazine and you see that there's a big chunk of text that's been quoted from another source, you're going to see it in what's called a block quote. And I'll show you what that looks like over here. Let's take the content from chapter 2 and put it, instead of in a paragraph tag, I'll put it in a block quote tag. I'm going to replace the opening p tag with the block quote tag. You'll see brackets is telling me there's a little problem. That's why it's highlighted red. That problem is I have an opening tag that's block quote, but it's matched with the closing tag that's the paragraph. Don't forget, you must also put the end tag. So I'm going to put block quote over here. And right as the tag was finished, you'll see in the live preview that something changed over here with chapter 2. What we're seeing is a block quote over here. So a regular paragraph will be in line with all of the other text here on the left. A block quote is just like a paragraph, except that it has a bit of extra margin here on the left side. So that's what a block quote is. The syntax is exactly the same as a paragraph. You have an opening tag and a closing tag. The closing tag has a slash to distinguish it. There's nothing different in terms of the syntax of creating these tags. The only difference is we're describing different kind of content. So in this example, I'm trying to tell the web browser that this text over here should be displayed like a block quote. I would suggest now that you take a moment to pause this video and maybe just set up your own little demo and try to use some of these tags. So I would use the paragraph tag, the heading tags, and the block quote tag just to make sure you see how to code them and that they are working properly. It's a good place to pause because the next set of tags are a little bit different. Syntax is the same, but we're going to start looking at the formatting tags next. So I suggest you pause this video, take a moment, take a little break, try to code some of those examples above, and then come back to continue with these formatting tags. Okay, the formatting tags. These tags are going to be much like you see in a normal text editor, where you could change the style of your text in special ways. Bold, italics, underline, subscript, superscript, and more. They're pretty simple to use. It's just a matter of remembering which tag is what. Fortunately, HTML tries to use some tag names that are logical. So for example, to bold your text, you would use the B tag for bold. To add italics into your text, you would use the I tag for italics. And for underline, you would use the U tag for underline. So let's go ahead and try each one of these examples. So let's go back up to chapter 1 over here, and I'll get my live preview open. And I'll choose a couple words to add some of these formatting tags. So let's take this word here and add the B tag. I'm going to remove that closing bold tag that it put. And then I will move to the end of the word and add the closing bold tag. There we go. So this word present is now displayed in bold over here. Turn on my mouse clicks for you. Now let's try italics. Let's take this word here, vitae. I'm going to add the opening I tag and remove the closing one and put the closing one over here. So now the word vitae, which you can see over here, is in italics. Finally, let's take this word audio and put it in underline by putting the U tag. Here we go. And now you can see the word audio over here is displayed in underline. So there's not too much to it. Just make sure that you're following the correct syntax and you don't make any syntax errors. And unfortunately, because you already have text and you're trying to add tags to existing text, this code assist thing might be a little bit of a nuisance because it's adding the end tag for you automatically. So we might in a future lesson turn that setting off. But just bear with it for now. Now I have a question for you. What if we want to make a word both bold and underlined? So let's do that over here. I'm going to make the opening bold tag and then the closing bold tag. And then I want you to treat it like a sandwich. So those are the outer buns of the sandwich, and inside I'm going to put another set of buns. So again, the sandwich analogy helps you out because we now have this kind of sandwich over here with the bold tag as the outer layer. Inside the sandwich, it has another layer of the italics. And these opening and end tags are matched like those buns of the sandwich. Okay, so that's a little bit more of an advanced example. It doesn't really happen so often, so don't stress too much about it. But if you get it, great. We'll look at a few more formatting tags. They are all used in the exact same way in terms of the syntax. Opening tag, closing tag. It's just the tag name that's different, and they each do a different thing. So subscript, superscript. Let's do an example of some subscript. So I'm going to add some text over here. H2O, right? That's the symbol for water if we get our chemistry caps on. And H2O, uh, in reality, the 2 should be in subscript. So I'm going to surround this 2 over here with the opening sub tag, right? And close that 2 with the closing subscript tag. So we've now surrounded one little character, the 2, with subscript. And you can see now over here, H2O, the 2 is being displayed in subscript. Now let's have a look at the superscript tag. So I'm going to come over here and I will type x2. So think of superscript, used in mathematical formulas, for example. So here I'm trying to create x squared. If I don't do anything special, you'll see x2 is just displayed normally. But if I add the superscript tag, sup, the opening subtag before the 2, I'm going to remove that end tag that Google Brackets put. And I'm going to move it over here after the 2. So I now have the number 2 surrounded by the opening subtag and the closing subtag. And then you can see it displayed over here in the preview as x squared, like the mathematical way. So that's pretty cool. The way I like to remember these different tags, so the subscript, you could think like a submarine going underneath the water, and the text will be displayed below the line. And then the sub tag, you can think of like Superman, flying up in the air to put the text above the line. So super cheesy, but it will help you to remember the difference between subscript and superscript. There are some other tags to do formatting. I'm not going to show them, but feel free to try them out yourself. They're the cite to create citations and the quote to create quotations. So cite and Q, and they all display the text slightly differently for these different situations when you want to create a citation or a quotation. Please note, I don't want you looking at this pre-formatted, predefined text tag. Okay, we're not going to use it, so you don't need to cover that. Okay, so we have a bunch of different formatting tags: bold, italics, underline, subscript, superscript, and then a few more for quoting stuff. This is a good point to pause the video and practice using these formatting tags. A little bit of theory. We've just used some examples of different kind of elements, tags that create different elements in the page that have different behaviors to them. We've created block elements and we've created inline elements. Block elements were the big blocks of text. They were the H1, H2, and all the heading tags, and the paragraphs. You can see an example here in this image over here, how blocks behave. They take up the full width of the page, and they have line breaks before and after them to separate them from the content that's coming after them. And they start stacking vertically like this. So these red boxes over here are showing you how block elements behave. They take up the full width of the page and they stack on top of each other. Inline elements, however, they don't have that behavior. They pretty much just take up as much space as necessary. They don't have any line breaks to push them to a new line. So examples of these were the formatting tags. Not all of them, but some of them. For example, bold, italics, underline. Those were examples of inline tags. Let's put the bold tag over here. Because these were examples of inline elements. So you can see this over here. We have a paragraph tag. If I just click on the paragraph tag in brackets, the live preview is showing you the block of text over here. Whereas if I click on the bold tag over here, it's not a block, it's an inline element. So this word that is bold here is just taking as much space as it needs inside the line. It is not creating a whole new block of text. So don't worry too much about that, but start thinking about the difference. Some tags are big blocks of text. Some tags are just inline and they take up only as much space as necessary. This info will help you to understand how the web browser is behaving when it displays your content, and later when we start working with CSS, we will see how we can manipulate these things to create more advanced website layouts. Okay, and the last thing we're going to learn this week are the empty HTML elements. Like I said before, most tags have a start tag and an end tag. However, there are some tags that do not. Some tags have no need for a start and an end tag. And I'm going to show you some examples. Line break tag and the horizontal line. Horizontal line is pretty easy to visualize, so let's have a look at that. I'm going to come over here in my demo, and after chapter 1, I'm going to insert a horizontal line. It is the HR tag. It stands for horizontal rule, like a ruler. That's why it's HR. But what it does is create a horizontal line. And the syntax is a bit different. So you see it over here. I'll explain it in a minute. But you can see what the HR tag does. It just added a horizontal line into the page over here. And that's it. So this is an example of a tag that is not surrounding any text. A horizontal line is just a horizontal line. It gets inserted in the page. You're not marking up any text to turn into a horizontal line, so there's no need for a start tag or an end tag. Okay. If we were to do something like this, a start HR tag and a closing HR tag, it doesn't really make sense because we don't really need any text here to turn into a horizontal line. We just want to insert the horizontal line into the page. So this kind of syntax doesn't really make sense. So I'm going to delete that. And here is the correct syntax for a horizontal line. We have the slash inside the start tag. So you see the difference? This was our syntax previously with a start tag and an end tag. And all we did was take this slash and put it into the start tag, and we removed the end tag. We kind of deleted all this stuff from the end tag. We kept the slash, and we put it over here inside the start tag. So that's the deal with empty tags. They don't need to surround any text content. You just insert them into the page wherever you want them. And the syntax is a little bit different with the slash inside the start tag. So that's the HR tag. And in the textbook, you'll notice the other tag, which is the BR tag, which is for a line break. So if you want just a single line break, then you could insert the BR tag. So let me show you that. Where should I put it? Let's go after this word here, porta or sapien. How about sapien? Here. And I'll insert the BR tag. There we go. Did you see the result? After the word sapien, we now have a line break, which is one line. So it's similar to a paragraph, but it's different. The paragraph creates a whole block of text with some space, some margin above and below it, whereas the line break just inserts a single line. So have a look at that. Those are the empty tags, the line break tag, and the horizontal rule tag. It's called horizontal rule for a horizontal line. And they have a little bit of a different syntax. So that's all I want to cover this week. So just to give a quick recap, we learned a little bit more about the paragraph tag and more specifically how the web browser displays it. We learned a few new heading tags, talking about dividing the page into some kind of table of contents with your title, your chapters, your subsections, and so on. And we learned about other formatting tags, the block quote, when you are quoting a long text. And then we learned about the other formatting tags, like bold, italics, and underline, subscript, superscript, citations, quotations. A little bit of theory to understand how the different formatting tags are being displayed, whether they're going to be block elements or inline elements. And we learned a new kind of tag called the empty tag, the line break, and the horizontal line. So you have a lot of stuff to practice this week, and I will make the exercises available to you so that you help practice these things. With these lectures, I suggest you just type them into your Google brackets, make sure you code them, make sure they're just working at a basic level, and then the exercises will really allow you to practice these things in a more realistic scenario. Okay, so that's it for the lecture this week, and I will see you soon in the lab.